Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, Steve Marshall protects a sexual predator. Also, the V-Team takes a look at more prison scandals. And the Alabama Criminal Court of Appeals seems to be afraid of Mike Hubbard. Let's take him to church. Oh, ye judges that will not judge, get to work, do your job, it's your duty. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
All right, thank goodness we're finally thawing out a little bit down here.
Yeah, well, you know, you'd have thought with all the hot air, Chip, that we wouldn't have had all this freeze, but...
I can't help it. I can't carry my heat all the way around this.
I'm not going to touch that. The town's not big enough, is it, Josh? Well, I'm glad to see we haven't lost our sense of humor, even though the legislature is in town. Crazy, I mean, this story, Josh, was so troubling that when Steve Marshall, our current Attorney General, was a district attorney, a man brutally assaulted a woman in his office. This man was an ADA, worked right beside Steve Marshall. And Steve Marshall, according to the court judge, he did nothing to protect this woman after a brutal assault.
Yeah, you know, the court records from that were really pretty revealing, you know, and nothing came of the lawsuit because of some technical issues there. Some, you know, statute of limitations had run out on the EEOC complaints that she filed. And so, you know, that was one thing. But then there's just really the right and wrong of it. And when you get to that, that's the part that I think that caught most people here, that this guy continued on. I mean, he legitimately attacked a woman in an office. And there's no disputing this, that occurred. And then he continued on, was later, you know, he was the ADA for a while, continued, was appointed as a judge, you know, and nothing happened. And this was the sort of the good old boy network that took place that kind of kept women down for a long time and allowed these sorts of things to happen. And now, in the current light of things, it's awful. But even without this current light, it's terrible. I mean, it is a terrible thing to have occurred.
Susan, he pinned her to the wall, had his hands down her pants and down her bra. Just read a little bit of what her testimony was.
And I have to apologize to our viewers because some of this is a little graphic, but I think it's important enough that everyone should hear it. And this is Ms. Dunlap telling the story. He had me pinned with my back against the wall. I kept saying, stop, stop, get off me, stop, stop it. He was trying to put his mouth on me. I could still feel his hot breath on my neck. I felt I was absolutely going to die. I couldn't move him because he was so heavy. He kept pushing his hands. He had one hand on my breast, underneath the top part of my bra. I could feel his fingers on my nipples. The other hand, again, I could feel he was at the top of my pubic area, and I knew I had to stop him.
And it went on for some time, and then Marshall, according to the court records, undisputed, did absolutely nothing except try to cover for this guy.
Not only did he do nothing, her office was moved to the basement. she was retaliated against, whether the court found that or not.
There were broken cameras. She had no security guards, and she was in charge of collecting restitution.
Yeah, look, I want to apologize for men, because this situation is exactly what the whole Me Too movement is about.
Yeah, that's right.
It's men in power using their position to protect other men and to keep this kind of stuff from coming out. Right. And I mean, it's clear as day in the record. It's undisputed by the judge. He described the whole thing as horrific.
And he'd been verbally harassing her prior to that with stuff I can't say out loud.
Well, I mean, I'm going to say some of it out loud. I mean, before this incident where he physically, brutally attacked this woman, he had been suggestive with her in the office. Everybody knew about it. He would ask her about her menstrual cycles. He would ask her, Josh, about did she like this type of position, that type of position. He even asked her, did she like to be whipped and smacked around?
Yeah, and you know, and if that sort of thing, I know you apologized before reading the statement from her, and so if that makes you uncomfortable now, sitting at home hearing it, imagine going to work every day and that being your life. And you're right, people did know about this. She told several people, and there was a kind of a code around the office between her and one of the other guys that was there, you know, that she would call him when this guy was around so he could come and help her out. That's what it got to.
That was her only out. Because they put her in a basement, and the only way that she could get any help if that guy came down there was to radio whoever. Yeah,
just radio somebody.
Can you imagine being under that terror? And I've been under not quite that, but you know, I have had some problems in the workplace, most women have. But to be in that kind of terror every day when all you want to do, as you said, Josh, was just go and do her job.
No, I can't. No, I mean, I can't imagine it.
And this is a young woman at the start of her career as well.
She was in her 20s, he was in his 50s.
Right, and this, let's just put it plainly. Marshall cared more about being district attorney than he did about this woman because she was a nobody to him. And this guy, Byron Waltrip, was a pillar of the community, old family, and they covered it up so he could keep his job.
And he did.
Yeah.
And he did.
And he did, yeah.
And you know what, Josh, this reminds me of what happened with Robert Bentley when Steve Marshall was appointed Attorney General.
Yeah, man, there's quite a pattern here of being willing to do pretty much anything to accept whatever job is on his radar next here. And, you know, at a point, man, you got to take some stands on something. And I don't know if anybody has seen such a thing from Steve Marshall. I don't know that he's ever, can you point to anything where he's taken a stand for anything, for doing anything to the benefit of somebody who needs protection of law enforcement?
And remember too, she tried to call him, she tried to email him. He would not take her calls, he would not return her emails. In fact, she called from a coworker's phone. He answered the phone thinking it was that coworker. He answered it, and when he realized it was her, he said, I'm really busy, I'll call you back later, and never called her back.
Called back. And this is all from court records that the judge says are indisputed. Yeah. And what he did was he used the power of his office to protect a good old boy against a woman who was in her 20s and had no power. This guy does not deserve to be a street sweeper in the state of Alabama, much less the Attorney General. He did not protect a victim, Susan.
No, he didn't. And let it continue in the continue of the retaliation in the office and the people
more
in the
than 180
office.
days until the point where she had to file an EEOC lawsuit.
Exactly.
And at that point it was invalid.
Right. And I got to tell you, in my suspicion of suspicions, and I'm usually right, that's the reason he did not return those calls, because he knew that 180 days was running.
We got just a couple of seconds left on this, but Josh, I talked to a former federal prosecutor, said if that had happened when he had an office, he would have taken this guy and held him on criminal charges.
Yes, Byron assaulted somebody in the office. I mean, that's what happened. If it had been another man who he had pinned up against the wall there and had tried to rough up a little bit, that would have been an assault that you would have then gone to somebody and they would have prosecuted this. What world does that not get prosecuted in? You're in a prosecutor's office.
I mean, Susan, last word?
If you've got a problem, if you think this is not right, I think I'd call the Attorney General's office and express my opinion.
That's probably a good idea. Do you have the number, Susan?
Actually, I do. If I can get to my phone here. It's 334 334-242-7300. Again, 334-242-7300. It's time to express your opinion.
All right, well, Steve Marshall says nobody watches our show and nobody reads our site, so he's not concerned about the bad press. Go down the hall, talk to Matt Hart, have him introduce you to Mike Hubbard. People care. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and opinions.
Improving our education system here in Alabama has always been a challenge, but it's one worth tackling. Providing our students the opportunity and resources they need to become future leaders is one of the most important tasks ahead in Montgomery in the coming years. That's why I was proud to work with my colleagues in the governor's office to pass an ambitious but responsible state budget that helps our kids put their best foot forward. And we invested an extra $13 million in the Alabama Pre-K program, the best in the country. I'm State Senator Tom Whiteley. We've got a lot of work ahead of us right here at home, and that's why I'm running for re-election.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Susan, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals has had the Mike Hubbard case now in total for 7 months, and they have yet to rule on this case. We are hearing out of the courts that they are trying to push this off at least past the primary season so they don't have to offend any of Mike Hubbard's friends.
To me, it looks like they're a little afraid of their fundraising. Because like Marshall, you know, a lot of the people that were involved in the Hubbard case are donating to him. Now, the average...
It looks like a list of unindicted co-conspirators.
Is that right that they've only had it for 7? I thought they've had it for 19.
Well, they've had... Okay, it's 7 months since everything was...
they got all the documents.
It took so many
there.
months for that full transcript.
So for the transcript to get there, I think she had to...
The appeal, you're right, came on the 5th of August, 2016.
Right.
But, all right, there's phases. You have to file the appeal, then they have to grant it, they have to gather all the documents, and then those have to be certified, and then it goes to the court to make a decision. Right. So the 7 months has been the time they've had to make a decision.
And in addition to the transcript, which was exceptionally long, they had over 500 motions that had to be, you know, certified and all that. Even still, at 7 months, they've had all of this documentation, 7 months. The national average for an appeal is, what, around 297 days?
That's for the whole thing. I mean, that's a murder case or anything.
Yeah, from what, and the reason I question it was because when this first happened, I was told by some attorneys who deal in this process a lot, was that the most that they could push it, the most Hubbard's legal team could push it and keep him out of prison was 11 months, a little bit more than 11 months and a week or something along those lines. So, and now we're at 19, which after the 11 months, that's all on the Court of Appeals. That's all on our process. Now, if you've ever been, and as a reporter I have a few times, down to the Court of Appeals to get documents, you know it's like walking into 1960 down there because, first of all, you get like a big receipt from a receipt book, and you got to get everything's got to be printed out, and you have to pay in cash, and it's
you have to use those 1980s computers to look
at
documents.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, and it's a dot matrix printer that sends it out to you, but it's a ridiculous process. I can't imagine what's going on.
Well, in 2016, they only processed 78, a little less than 70 some cases, or a little more than 70 some cases. Listen, they've already done 30 this year. I mean, get with the program. Let's get it on. I mean, Chip, justice delayed is justice denied. People don't have confidence in the courts. They don't have confidence in the judicial system. And this is why, because Beth Kellum and Lyles Burke, who's going to be appointed to the federal judiciary, and Walsh, Judge Walsh, and them, they're just sitting on their hands.
Yeah, and keep in mind two things also. This is not a trial court.
No.
You don't have to, they don't hold trials. They read over documents and write their opinion. And other thing to keep in mind is that this whole time, Mike Hubbard's been out on bail.
Yeah.
Hasn't gone to prison.
And causing mischief.
And still running his radio station, which is against federal law.
Well,
convicting felons.
It's just the craziness of all this is that BCA, lobbyist lawyers, big donors do not want to embarrass Jimmy Rain, Will Brook, Hoare Construction, and all these guys that were unindicted co-conspirators. They want to be able to do away with that part on principles, and they want to wait to get past the primary. You know, it just reminded me of something, Josh, and I was thinking about this. Susan, maybe we'll look into this. You know, all those people that are giving money to Steve Marshall, maybe we need to call them up and say, do they condone this type of activity? I've certainly tried to call the court over here. They won't answer my calls. But we'll move on.
Maybe a good project.
That's enough to be discussing about.
Let me put it in my basket.
That's enough to be discussing about. Okay. Josh, I know you love this one, and you feel it's just totally appropriate. I'm sure that the state of Alabama wants to hire a company to take care of our prisons' mental and physical health that just lost 8,000 doses of a pain med in a prison in Indiana. They just went poof.
Seems reasonable. I mean, 8,000? Is that all they lost? They couldn't have lost any more than 8,000 pills? I mean, what are we doing?
They just dropped one here.
Yeah, out of 38,000, they just rounded it back off to 30. So, you know, to give that to the population. And I think Chandler said, or Chandler Hines says, can you imagine what 8,000 pills on this table would look like?
It's a good behavior present.
Yeah, well, they got between 175 and 275 prisoners that take these pills. In a 2-month period, they were shipped 38,000, and they just went poof, just gone.
I mean, well, luckily, though, Wexford has a sterling record other than this.
Yeah.
It's not like they're involved in any other scandals and any other stuff.
That's right.
Bribery or
this is Jeff Dunn, Commissioner Dunn's first choice, and I guess the KIV administration has signed off on it. They're negotiating a chip with this company to take care of our mental health and physical health after we are under court sanction. And Wexford, the courts in Indiana and Illinois found that they weren't even doing the good job up there. Now we want to hire them here.
Yeah. Keep in mind, this is after what you said, right after the federal courts have ruled that Alabama's mental health is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to hire a company to come in and fix that, and this is the company that we picked.
Maybe that's where the 8,000 pills went. Maybe we're high.
And I hear the other scandals, they happen way out west. I'm sure, you know, Jeff Dunn didn't hear about it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you know.
Yeah, you mean the one in Mississippi?
Well, you know, Alabama's favorite pastime is getting sued. We get sued over immigration. We get sued over abortion. We get sued over mental health. If we do this, we're going to get sued over mental health again.
Well, and
how many dollars
if
are we
you
racking up?
just took your time, bid it like it's supposed to be bid, pick a company that will operate above board.
Chip.
Don't pass legislation that you know is unconstitutional. I'm just saying, these are things that would save the state of Alabama a lot of money.
Applying logic to politics.
How could we get kickbacks if we do it the right way?
That's right. Well, you know, the funny thing is Wexford doesn't have a lobbyist. They say that Jeff Dunn is their lobbyist, the commissioner, but it doesn't make any sense.
There's nobody listed as their lobbyist.
There's no lobbyist, really, because you don't get a contract in Alabama unless you grease the wheels.
Did they pay him with pills?
I don't know. Maybe so. Anyway, on a positive note, this past week, Representative Martha Roby, announced that Emily Taylor Johnson is now her communications director. She came out of the office of Senator Shelby. And, you know, that's adding to Katie Britt and Tori Miller Matus, that are women from Alabama who are serving in Congress, helping our state delegation do better. kind of nice to have some
It
women
is
out there,
wonderful, and these are very bright, very intelligent women. And I mean, if you ever talk to any of them on their phone, I mean, they're going 90 to nothing, but doing a fantastic job.
Well, we want to congratulate Emily for her job and congratulate Martha Roby for picking her. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
Improving our education system here in Alabama has always been a challenge, but it's one worth tackling. Providing our students the opportunity and resources they need to become future leaders is one of the most important tasks ahead in Montgomery in the coming years. That's why I was proud to work with my colleagues in the governor's office to pass an ambitious but responsible state budget that helps our kids put their best foot forward. And we invested an extra $13 million in the Alabama Pre-K program, the best in the country. I'm State Senator Tom Watley, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us right here at home. And that's why I'm running for re-election.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Governor Kay Ivey has decided that there needs to be a work requirement to receive Medicaid in the state, something that the federal government has said she can do. Josh, you have taken issue with that. It's kind of a new Medicaid scam.
It's stupid.
Put it that way.
It's stupid is what it is. It's a dumb thing. Number one, there's no able-bodied single person on Medicaid in the state of Alabama. There's just not. The only people who are on Medicaid, the majority of your Medicaid population is made up of elderly, the disabled, and children. The rest of it is made up by people who care for the elderly, the disabled, and children. There's nobody out there who's just scamming you for health care, okay? Most Medicaid scams, 90+% of Medicaid scams are on the provider end of things. Everybody knows this. All this is a scam to convince people that these poor people who are taking Medicaid are somehow or another scamming you. There's this big scam going on, and that's why it's costing millions of dollars. Not that they need health care, and this is the cost of providing it because we have a pretty crappy health care system. That's the bottom line.
I mean, Susan, do you think this is some kind of election year kind of pandering? Because, I mean, our state legislators are all behind funding the child health insurance program, CHIP, which does pretty much the same thing this does. I mean, is this just more pandering?
It is pandering. I mean, CHIPS is a part of the Medicaid program, okay? So when you're doing this, you're just ginning up your base. You know, all those people, like Josh says, well, there's just waste and corruption everywhere. Yeah, but you need to look where it is, not just blanket the entire system with it.
I remember when they were passing this, you had to work or something, some kind of additional work to get your benefits like the EBT cards.
EBT cards,
I remember I think it was Brian Taylor when he was in the Senate, said, well, I rode by and I saw some people just sitting out on their porch, and I knew they were drawing EBT cards.
Oh.
How in the heck did he know that, Josh?
Well, he rode through a bad part of town, and you know, some blood.
Oh, you mean the Brian Taylor that tried to get the requirements on the GI Bill lowered so that his children could get free college? That one?
Yeah, well, anyway, whatever. Chip?
I want to put some numbers to this. It's 52% of people on Medicaid are kids. Another 15% are over the age of 60. I mean, like you said, there's nobody on here that's going to be able to work. And the bills that are in the legislature right now, they don't have to have a bill, but there's one going through the legislature right now that would exempt the other people. Mothers who are pregnant mothers and then mothers who are caring for children would be exempt from the work requirement. This is, like you said, nothing more than just trying to gin up the base, and it has other connotations that I don't know if we want to get into, but we all know what the image of.
Yeah, well, we know what the connotations are. We've lived here a long time. But here's the, speaking of the numbers, for a single person to qualify for Medicaid, they have to earn less than $2,300 per year.
On top of that,
per year,
they're now going to raise the copays on those people.
Yeah, they're going to raise copays on top of that.
People get Medicaid because they're poor.
Yes, and they need care.
Yeah.
And look, here's the thing about this, okay? You can kick all these people off the rolls that you want to. You cannot expand Medicaid. But let me tell you what's going to happen. These people are going to go in for care somewhere. Yep. They're going to go into an ER, and they're going to receive the most expensive care on the planet at that ER, and we are going to pay for it.
Right.
Let me just insert a little thing here, maybe just a small example of the problems this can cause. So we have a mother that has a child that has the flu, right? She can't afford the copay to go and take the child to the doctor. Did anybody notice that state of emergency that we've had in the last few weeks on the flu?
Mm-hmm. And
middle school child.
Yeah, and a Pike Road third grader died.
Exactly.
Well, this is
ramifications,
short,
people.
This is terribly short-sighted because when they go to the ER, which they're going to go, they have to treat them, and then the cost is passed along to those of us who pay for the insurance.
Yes.
Well, we're the ones already paying for Medicaid, but nobody seems to ask us. They ask the crazies. This does not fit the model of what we're seeing out of the state legislature right now. We don't see them turning every issue into some kind of piece of red meat. This is a bad idea, I think.
Yeah, it's essentially a push against budgeting for things, and and this has been the kind of the debate over Obamacare overall here, where people kind of got lost in the, hey, my premiums are skyrocketing and things like that. And that was understandable. I understand that people were unhappy with that and how that was working. But the idea of Obamacare overall was, listen, we're already paying for these people. If we put them on the rolls, we get them some preventative care out there, we help mitigate some of those rising costs over the long haul here. Initially, it's going to be a hit to a lot of people, but we're going to have to pay for it eventually somewhere down the line.
Well, let's face it, we're the only industrialized nation in the world that doesn't have universal health care for everyone. I talk to doctors all the time, Chip, that say, look, we got to quit the scam. I mean, when we found out, right? Obamacare, everybody hated that.
Yeah.
But the Affordable Care Act, people seem to like that.
Yeah, it matters what name you put on it and which president it brings to mind.
Yeah.
And, if you look at the rise in premiums before Obamacare, they were way higher than the rise in premiums after Obamacare. And whatever you want to say about the bill, I think that says something. But something like this for Medicaid has never been implemented before. No state in the 50-year history of Medicaid has done this. This is the first time that an administration is going to allow states to get a waiver. And keep in mind that most of Medicaid is funded by the federal government.
And you know what's coming with this. Arthur Orr has a bill here that's going to allow a private company to come in and check these rolls. So they're going to double the amount of checks that they have, and they're going to have this company come in, and the company is going to be paid based upon how much savings is there, which means when you can say it's savings, but really it's kicking people off the rolls.
Unfortunately, this past week, we lost Representative George Bandy. He was a Democrat who had served a long, long time in the House. He will be missed. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.